afternoon.
My name is Sarah, and I'm with the Living Archives Project, where we are collecting stories on how communities in Mecklenburg County were impacted by COVID. Today I have the privilege, today is November 14th. Wow, the year is flying by.
It is.
And I have the privilege of sitting down with Jamaal and Hannah, and can't wait to hear their stories. Would you both introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so I am Hannah Hassan. I live here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm 40 years old. I am brown skin with a round face. I have on a green shirt with white and pink flowers on it and a black head wrap and some gold hoop earrings.
You look beautiful today.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, so it's my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. I am Jamaal Abdul-Awwal. I am 42 years old. I live here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Was born in Rockingham, raised in Richmond, Virginia. As for my appearance, I have a nice beard. Kind of sparse, but I like it. Milk chocolatey skin. Stand about 6 feet tall, a larger man with a very deep voice, as you can hear. And that is me.
Yes. And today I'm loving your outfit, Jamaal. Your
Yeah,
green
you know.
jumpsuit with your black
It's like a
shirt.
heather green, you know?
Yeah, I love that
Yes,
heather green.
heather green.
Heather green? Love it. Really great. So how long have you mentioned, Jamaal, that you're from Richmond, and you mentioned that you also moved to Charlotte area.
Yeah.
How long ago did you guys move, and what brought you to Charlotte?
Yeah, so I moved here in 2007 from Greensboro. I was originally from Statesville, North Carolina, so all North Carolina areas. And I just moved here. I graduated college, and it was time for a change, some new opportunity to start thinking about my career, so I moved to Charlotte.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Jamaal?
Well, I moved down here in 2009 when I got married to this lady here. I was living in Richmond. I'd been in Richmond since 1990. So it was, whew, when you think about it, that's a long time. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what brought me down here. I'd always been thinking about maybe coming to Charlotte and moving down here, going to a slightly larger city. And it just so happened that everything came together. And so
Yeah, I
I
love
made
that.
it down here.
You know, I don't get to often interview a husband and a wife, so tell me, how did you guys meet?
We met online before dating apps were a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are both Muslim, and in our faith tradition, you know, you get married. It's part of the thing. And so I was in my 20s, and I knew that, you know, I was looking to find a husband at some point, or for my husband to find me rather. And I joined like this Muslim online dating site,
Okay.
and Jamaal happened to be on there, and we eventually, I guess what they would say nowadays, like matched with each other.
Yeah.
And that was sort of initially how we were introduced to each other. Then we moved over to Facebook and started talking, and then it just sort of
Okay.
took steps from there. But we met online initially. Yeah.
That's facts.
Awesome. Awesome. And so you guys have both been in Charlotte for quite a bit of time now. You've probably seen Charlotte go through so many transitions.
Yeah.
What is one thing that sticks out to you or resonates with you?
I don't know. I think the main thing would be just the amount of growth. Like, I think that Charlotte has grown more than what was expected. Like, in terms of just with the way the city is laid out, with the growth of how many people are here, and just trying to make it through the city. There's some parts that feel like it's just like stuffed. But it's not really like you have a lot of room to grow out of Charlotte. So it's kind of like it's a little bit congested, more than it was when I first got here. But I mean, they're working on it, I guess. You know, expanding roads and you know, putting, you know, their schools up now. They're, you know, schools are getting overcrowded, so they're building up new schools, and people are, you know, moving out towards, you know, the south part of Charlotte. It's kind of expanded. You know, places that used to be like just open woods and fields now have stuff there. It's just weird sometimes.
Yeah.
I think I have a specific memory. It was into the pandemic.
Okay.
I mean, we stayed at home a lot, and from March 2020 until, and I remember this moment where maybe I was in the car by myself, but I was driving I don't know where I was going, but I got off the highway off of Sugar Creek, which is an exit I take a lot because our mosque is out there. And I took the exit and I was dumbfounded. Like, I could not believe how different things looked. There were it felt like just during the span of that sort of stay home period during the pandemic, like we were staying home, but apparently people were still building. Like there was entire apartment complexes that seemed like they shot up overnight. That was such a surprise. It was a shock to my system. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Because you kind of, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of felt like the world was on pause for a second.
Yeah.
But then you're like, no,
Yeah.
it's not on pause.
Yeah, we found out later that the builders were still building. We were just at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, since you talked a little bit about the pandemic,
Yeah.
tell me, what was your experience like?
You go first.
I often think about the beginning piece, March 2020. It was horrible. We found Jamal's mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which is often a fast, quick, very difficult cancer.
I'm so sorry, Jamal.
Yeah, it was like a year, a whole less than a year.
It wasn't even a year. It was like July of 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe before then. I don't. Yeah, July.
Well, no,
you're right.
Yeah, she wasn't diagnosed with the cancer until like July.
Yeah.
Of 2019.
And she passed away in Richmond. I'm sorry, in Virginia Beach, where she was at the hospital. Literally, right before the stay home orders began to come down.
It was the middle of March. Yeah.
So our last moments with her, nobody knew how to do anything. Where we were in the hospital, but we were only able to be in the room a couple of people at a time, that kind of thing. And when it came, so she passed away and her funeral was to be the next week. We had moments where we didn't even know if we could go or should go, or because of we didn't know. We were getting calls from our family up north. They were in New York saying that there were people were driving around with bodies in the back of those big trucks, and they said that the National Guard was there. Now I'm saying this stuff that was happening. We thought that they were maybe sensationalizing things, but no, that was happening. And so we just didn't know if we could or should even go to the funeral. And I remember we did decide to go, and I remember sitting in the funeral. Her funeral was something like March 18th or
15th or something like that.
Right there. And she was such a lively and amazing woman, and so many people knew her, and she had this awesome career. And in my mind, if we would have ever planned for a funeral for her, there would be doctors and people from all over Virginia who knew her to come, and that just wasn't the case because they couldn't. Nobody knew what to do. I remember distinctly one of her good friends being there, and she was sitting in the back. And the whole time you could tell she was just scared to be around people. And so there's just the shock of having to live with the fact that she's gone. And we're at this funeral, and I'm pulling out hand sanitizer the entire time because there are also people who want to comfort you. That piece was really, I just bizarre. And oftentimes I think that we never really buried her, or I don't know.
And gave her a proper send off.
That, yeah.
Because even at that time, you were hearing a lot of rumors of what this disease would do, how fast it spread, how it spread. I think even at that time, we were still thinking okay, we think it's an airborne virus, but it might be spread through touch. So, you know, you didn't really want to gather a lot of people together because you were unsure of how it was doing. Like there was even a thought at some point of not even having like a big funeral and doing something more like um, like I was thinking more of a graveside service because you don't know what people are bringing because they're coming from different places, even family members, and you don't know, you're not quite sure like if you do bring all these people together, what that's going to mean when you mix people from different places. And you know, we still get information on how the symptoms are going to show, when they are going to show. You know, how do you test? Like, I don't even think at that time they had brought out any kind of way to really test like they did later on, where you have home tests where you can, you know, 15 minutes you can find out if you're positive or not. At that point, it was, you know, you might have to go to the hospital or something.
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. First off, so sorry for your loss.
Thank
I'm so sorry for all of that to happen the way it did happen.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, you know, from my understanding, depending on the state, there's a lot of restrictions and limitations on how many people you could have and where you could have it. Did you guys also encounter things like that?
We did at the hospital when trying to see her and stuff. They were trying to figure it out. The blessing in it all is that she passed like right before stay home orders like became a national thing. So we were able to, you know, her funeral did not have those types of restrictions on it. They were self-imposed, you know. People were like, what's going on? You know. And now, as he was saying, I was thinking to myself, another blessing for us probably was that most of us and her family was concentrated south. And the virus had not, it had reached North Carolina, but and Virginia and stuff, but it wasn't like how it was in New York or some of the other cities yet. So, you know, a little less exposure. Yeah.
During that time, what were you guys feeling?
I don't know.
I mean, it was very nerve wracking at that time because I think I was saying this to her maybe last night. You read about stuff like this in history books and you think about it as something that happened in the past. You never think that you're going to be involved in a situation where you have something like this that travels across the world and is impacting everybody at every level globally. And not only just with the idea of it, but you see it coming. You see like physically, like everything, like just come. And it's like, it's surreal when you think about it, because it starts with, you know, like I said, the rumors, you hear of things, and then it just like creeps on you. And then it gets closer and closer and closer to you, to where you're hearing like, oh, at my job, someone got sick. Oh, this guy that my cousin's married to passed away. And it's just like, with every degree, it gets closer until then, like, you get a phone call where it's like you have a family member who like maybe has come down with it. Then the whole family has it. And you're like on pins and needles, you know, trying to, you know, just figure out like, okay, well, what does this mean? Like, how is this going to play out? And you never think that like, oh, like someone could get sick and then within like a week or two be dead. Someone that was normally healthy, something like that could happen. So it's a lot of fear that comes with it.
Yeah.
And with, you know, starting off COVID with a death, which it was, the death of my mother wasn't COVID related, but starting it off like that, it feels like an impending doom that's coming. Because even I don't know if you remember this, like when she was talking about the National Guard and stuff, they were thinking like we might have a shutdown order where like there are the National Guard and tanks that are actually guarding the cities, making sure that no one is out there. And you're thinking like, this sounds like a movie, like I don't know, like one of those zombie movies or something like that, where it's like no one can be out, everyone has to stay in. You're not sure when it's gonna end, if it's gonna end.
Yeah.
So you're just really on pins and needles and just waiting to get more information so that you can somewhat be able to move around like you did before.
Yeah, I felt afraid, like just consistently scared for so many things. For my mom, who I I knew that like her being, in a place where she couldn't communicate like in the way that she does, which is in person, and she likes to go places and be in community. That's where she's the most healthy. That made me scared. I felt scared for all the things Jamal just mentioned. Everything stopped. Like, so I work in the arts, in community speaking, and I was really excited because this was going to be a year where I had so many opportunities that were already stacking up, like literally.
Like speaking engagements.
Yes, my last speaking engagement before COVID, I had just been in Pennsylvania. I hopped on a plane, came back to Charlotte, did an engagement for it was like a Women's Impact Day or something like that. Like, and my calendar was packed for 2020, like the rest of the year. And I have a memory of standing in my kitchen getting like the last email and this was the one that I was the most excited about, like a keynote address for a national conference that was going to be in Florida. And it was basically saying, this has been canceled and we don't know when or if it will happen again. And at that point, like 100% of all of the opportunities for my career that I had were gone. So I had worked so hard to get to my career to that place. And it was not a thing of we have rescheduled. Like everybody was like, this is canceled and we don't know when. So to go financially for my part of what I contribute to our household and our family was gone in that moment. And then on top of that, like my career is something that brings me joy and gives me purpose and hope, and like that's gone as well, or at least as I thought of it at that time. Yeah. So and then just not knowing what COVID could do to the people that I love, to possibly me. And I mean, I had never even thought about being on a ventilator one day until COVID-19 came. And just the fear of that kind of thing. Will that hurt if it happens?
Start to have conversations around that.
Yeah. And I had also, I had a brother, my brother who's right above me in age, who suddenly passed away November of 2019. And it was something rare that, and we started sort of having conversations, my sibling group, of like, because he had been to China, like, what if he had COVID and they just didn't know that? And, so then thinking about like, what if, like, what could that look like? Just, I was not far removed from still managing the death of my brother and trying to make sense of that. And then my mother-in-law, and, like it was just loss after loss after loss, and trying to figure out which one should I prioritize today. It's just a lot of fear for me.
I can't imagine how overwhelming that must have felt.
Yeah.
What helped you guys through it?
I think it was just us, because not too long after that, the stay at home, it wasn't the order, but the recommendation for everyone to just, hunker down and not go into any, big spaces with crowds of people.
Yeah.
Like they were even getting to the point where, like religious gatherings, like church events, anything like that, they were saying like not to, do it. And voluntarily, some folks did cancel, But it wasn't too long after that where they were like, okay, like you can't get together. Like what was it? It was I think it was a certain number, like groups of 10 or something. Like they whittled down. Like first it was like a group of like 30, then it was like 25, then it was like 10, then it was like, socially distanced. Like just if you have to do that, no big groups over like 10 or whatever. So I mean, in times like that, you count on being able to, I guess, connect with the people that are closest to you and be around them for support.
Yeah.
And this was an event where specifically you couldn't do that, where you couldn't be like, oh, okay, like we should all get together over someone's house and we'll support each other through this. It was like, no, like we'll have to maybe do one of those drive-bys, or maybe from the yard we can talk a little bit over the phone, or the Zoom meetings, things like that. So normally the people that you would fall back on, just being in their presence wasn't something that we were able to do. So it's kind of like you really had to like look within yourself, look within those that are closest to you, like in proximity, and kind of just lean on each other. Everybody had to whittle down those big family groups to like, all right, we are a family of 2. Somebody else might be a family of 5, like, husband, wife, kids, or whomever. And you just have to find ways to support each other so that, no one gets too low. You don't want to have someone kind of get depressed and feel like the world is kind of closing in on them. So you just look to those that, are by your side and say like, hey, like we have to support each other. We have to make sure that we keep our heads above water.
It was us.
Yeah.
Yes. Like,
well, it was, there are other people
but she's asking directly, what did we do? And we had each other.
Yeah.
We prayed. We have a strong faith grounding.
Yeah.
We had good times together. Like, we watched a lot of TV.
Spent a lot of time together.
So many series of,
That's what I was saying. Like, you have to, lean on that person to make sure that, today is a day that, we don't drown in our sorrows or let the news get to you to a point where you're just, going stir crazy. Because
but she's asking you about you.
Oh, about me?
Yes, this whole thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying about me. Like,
Well, say me. What did you do?
I did the most. I did the most. I made sure that you kept your head above water and didn't get cabin fever. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Gosh.
We did things together, like watch TV, like you said.
Yeah.
And spent a lot of time like eating meals together and talking.
And learning all the things.
And also trying to separate sometimes too.
Yes.
Like I made sure, when I say this, I mean I made sure that even though we were in a 1-bedroom apartment, we didn't spend all our time togetger. Because then you kind of get,
He said that itchy. Like I was the one who wanted to spend all the time.
Yes, I can get a little itchy. There's only so much time to spend with someone for you're like, all right, like.
I learned
done it.
that I did not know a lot of things about Jamaal. Yes, like I think this was the first time that we were both working from home. Because I transitioned most of my practice to virtual things. So Zoom, consulting, some performances, that type of thing. And he was working from home as well. And again, we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment. So we did get some new desks and things of that nature to set stuff up. But Jamaal, like, I did learn that he doesn't just like walk into a room, he like enters a room. And it always happened when I was on the middle of a Zoom call. Loud.
See, she tries to make it like it's like I'm Kramer from Seinfeld.
That's how he sounded.
The door just flies open.
It does.
It's like, Jared.
I've never seen that show, but that's what would happen. And he always made the loudest cups of coffee. Like it would go so slow to him, like and I'm in the middle of performing a poem.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So we had those moments too, but I believe, like, in hindsight, that time frame really helped me to see just how strong our marriage was. Because like I don't have too many moments that I can look back on and be like, it was touch and go for a minute there. Like, we
And
were
that's
chilling.
a blessing too, because I
Yeah.
know that COVID probably for some other people was. I'm not gonna say like it was terrible. I mean, in terms of their relationships, but for some people that can be like jarring. In terms of just the simple fact of it's not the fact that you chose to kind of stay and like distance yourself from people. You're kind of forced to be around all the time, and once you be around someone, it could get to a point where just like even the smallest things just irritate you. And for some people's relationships, that it did. Some people it's going to bring them closer. Some people it's going to break them apart.
Yeah.
So the good thing is that I think for us it brought us closer.
Mm-hmm.
Like we didn't have any like dust ups or just explosions of emotions because things have just been weighing on us. Like we actually did all right for the whole time. We're talking about like years because before you go from or we went from like I go in the office, like I'm not at home all day, to then like, oh, we're here all day all the time. We would love to leave but we can't because the places you used to go, even things like the supermarket just to go get groceries, is now like, okay, like this is a place you could catch COVID. So let's not be around people as much as we can. And it's just even just the little things of just going out and being around people. I think for me it wasn't that difficult because I don't have to be around people. But for other folks, I know that could be a stressor, and those stressors are something that get bottled up in the home when you're not able to do things as you want to. But for us, I mean, we made it. Like, we turned those lemons to lemonade, basically.
So in those moments where you guys are like, okay, you just need a minute to breathe. What were some things that you guys did?
Sleep.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, I mean, or just separate, like
Can hide in a bathroom.
Did you ever hide in the bathroom for real?
Have a 40-minute bathroom session.
Social media.
In there, just on your phone. Just,
TikTok is at that I discovered TikTok around that time, and it was helpful. I mean, it created like a
she
global
liked to
community.
go sit in her car too.
Oh yeah,
She's go out in the parking lot of our apartment complex and sit in the car, and
because I'd rather sit in the car than
change
like
locations.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, we did a lot of just those different things. At some point, at that first year, it was Ramadan for us, which meant that like it was a time of like fasting and like lots of like prayer and reflection and stuff. That helps. I think that was a difficult Ramadan because we're used to being in community and that kind of thing. So that first one for sure was hard. But yeah, I think there's this piece of our lifestyle where we pray 5 times a day. And even if he has cramered his way through the room a few times in that day and I'm frustrated or annoyed or whatever, there's that piece of like, you can only be but so upset with someone when you have to pray beside them, in a couple of hours. So I believe that, we would be remiss if we didn't. I think that even if we weren't being cognizant of it, our spiritual grounding, our faith tradition, our beliefs probably really helped us during that time.
Definitely.
Yeah. And still do.
Yeah, I think that it really is dependent upon like your outlook, which our background, Islamically speaking, has us take an outlook of always having hope in faith that things are going to get better, and trying to approach each situation with, a clear mind, and not come in with like those negative thoughts that enter, like, oh my God, like this is going to be forever, like we're never going to be able to get back together. All the things that kind of just poke at you during a time like that. So it's the main thing is just like, I would say, like your attitude towards it, which I know like it can seem kind of sappy or whatever, but it really is. Like if you come into like any kind of situation where you have those voices in the back of your mind that's telling you different things, like just being able to say like, no, I'm not going to let this, conquer me. I'm not going to let this, color the mood that we're going to have. Like we're going to be here together. And if we're going to be here together, we're going to come at it, with a positive attitude and make sure that we do everything we can do personally or individually to make this work.
Yeah.
That's good. So tell me a little bit more about, because I know what Ramadan is, but others don't know.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that and how not being able to connect to community impacted you during that season.
Yeah.
Oh, let me start. Oh, good old Ramadan. Ramadan, a month of fasting, and also a month of community, because every day we're encouraged to pray together as a community, to have a community life. They have iftars at night, which is basically when we break our fast around, I think normally it's like about 8 o'clock or so. During that time. Depends on the time of the year. For us to get together, we all break fast together, and then we all pray together. And then on Fridays, we have service called Juma, where we come together as a community and we pray. And also we're able to, talk with each other and visit. All of those things were shut down. So now, instead of us getting to the mosque, we're now doing it online. And we're watching YouTube videos. Or sometimes, maybe towards maybe 1 or 2 years in, they would do like live streaming. Like they would catch up so that you could live stream, the services. But during Ramadan, it was difficult, because even then, if I understood, like you can't get around all of these people because you don't know where they're coming from. But even like family, it's like going from house to house. Like normally you'd go over maybe, friend's house. I would have dinner together. You sit and talk, maybe just visit, just normally visit. It's difficult when something that is the foundation of it is togetherness in a time when you cannot be together, or it's better for you not to be together. So now you're having to do these things that you did as a community individually, and it can damper the situation. It can, for in some instances, like kind of make you go from like getting excited about doing things and being around, your family and y'all doing things collectively, to like, questioning like how much effort are we gonna put into this? Because it's just like me and you. Are we gonna have a feast? Are we gonna like really, do something and celebrate when we normally celebrate together? It's difficult, and so it provided a time of difficulty in terms of getting excited about things that you normally would get excited about. And sometimes I know for me it became a little mundane. Like it took the spark out of it.
Yeah, it was. So also something that you didn't say. So during the month of Ramadan, Muslims fast from sun up to sundown. Fast for us means abstain from food, drink, and sexual relations with your partner, your spouse during that time. During the daylight hours. And those hours were, like you were saying, 12-hour days at least during
more like
that
14.
time. Maybe like 14. And this sounds like such a non-problem, but I really got to the point where I was tired of eating home food, like food that we cooked. And when you fast all day, any Muslim or person who fasts knows that you're thinking like, oh, I know what I want, and and it's not my baked chicken again. But here we are. That's that mundane piece that Jamal was talking about. It is still trying to hold on to the sacred nature of what this is, of remembering that there are reasons that we are abstaining ourselves. Like there, and part of it is about the people you share community with, and that kind of thing, and remembering like we're fasting inside of this comfortable apartment with heat, with air, with all the amenities we could ever ask for, even though it be during a global pandemic. And there are people we're seeing on TV who are in other places, they're still fasting, and this isn't their reality. So it's that constant reminder that, we had to sit in. We were able to do these family. So my family, I was raised Muslim. So my outside of us, my family is Muslim. Most of Jamal's is not, but we were still able to do these family iftars where we would do them virtually. So we would pick like a food theme, and everybody from their homes would make Mexican food or whatever for breaking of the fast, and we would also pick a theme, like a word from the Quran that we would share, and that kind of thing. And I mean, it wasn't being together in the way that you do togetherness, but we found small ways to just figure it out. Yeah.
I love that. So now fast forward when the restrictions were lifted and you could celebrate Ramadan with others. What did that look like?
It was Eid for me. So after we finish Ramadan, we have Eid, which is our time of like celebration. We have a big prayer where all the Muslims from around the city come and we pray together, and then we have brunch and all these other things. And it makes me feel the feels, but I remember our first Eid and it wasn't with the whole of the Charlotte Muslim community like we normally do. It was just our masjid. But it was just so good to see a lot of those folks. Some of them who like sometimes get on my nerves and all of those other things.
All the faces.
It was just still really beautiful, even behind masks, because we were masked up at that point. But to just be able to be together and to be in our spaces and, to worship together and to celebrate Ramadan, it was a reminder, I think that was, for me, the best part.
I don't know if they call it like COVID fatigue, or maybe COVID fatigue is just being tired of the restrictions, but I still had like concerns about it. Because I didn't feel like, even when the restrictions were lifted, I didn't feel like we were out of the woods. So there was still that fear of like, just when we let our guard down and we start coming together, there's going to be another uptick. Because even then, like, you would hear of people getting back together and doing stuff, and then there would be like a minor outbreak. Especially like around holiday times, where they would say like, be careful when traveling, be careful when doing this, because you're going to have people going from this place to that place, and we're going to see an uptick in hospitalizations or something like that. So even when they said like it's good to, or we're not good, but we can start meeting in terms of larger groups and not just like 2 or 3 of us at a time, I still, was cautious, wearing a mask, keeping, hand sanitizer, not trying to, get too close to people, because at that point we knew it was an airborne virus. So I'm like, I don't want to be around a whole bunch of people that, everybody's around, they're talking, laughing. And I'm like, I'm still on guard, because if not for me, then maybe for somebody else, maybe like an older person who, may not be able to withstand getting sick again. And, it's like that's one thing that happened during COVID, is that now I'm on guard more. And it wasn't like I wasn't like that before, because growing up, I had a lot of family members that were in the medical field. And when you grow up with somebody who's in the medical field, they do a lot of sanitizing, a lot of cleaning, a lot of disinfecting. So a lot of the things that people were saying or the recommendations we were getting, like from the CDC, those are things that I was used to, like having like antibacterial cleaning products and some wearing gloves. Like my mother, she was a nurse. She had like gloves in the house. Like it's not like we were like in a surgical, but she worked in and I think what did they call it? Orthopedics. And she was in charge of like the surgical techs. So she was used to having and keeping supplies to make sure that you had like a clean, sterile environment. So growing up, like that's what we did. And when you listen to like your mom growing up about like diseases and bloodborne pathogens and things like that, you're like, oh, okay, like, do we really need to do this? Like, do we really have, like, this is just like old wives' tale. But then when you see something like this, you're like, oh, okay, like, let me fall back on some of those things that my mom used to talk about with, the way that viruses and stuff are passed. And, just to round it up, but just getting back to that, I couldn't find myself all the way comfortable. Because as I go out there, I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but I'm looking around at people and I'm just thinking like...
You talking about the Eid?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, I mean, because normally we get together and it's maybe thousands of people. Like, it could be easily 5,000. When we got back together, it was more like 100 or 150. But even amongst then, like, you're still, or at least in my mind, I'm still thinking about where are these people coming from? Did they socially distance? Are they, I guess I'll bring it up. Are they vaccinated? Who chose not to vaccinate? And then are any of these people those folks that were just like, I don't care what advice they get from the government. I'm going to do what I want to do. If I want to go visit with family, I'm just going to go visit. And you don't know. You don't know who did what or how strictly they followed the guidance. And now we're all coming together. And I'm thinking to myself, these people who are so quick to take off their masks are maybe the people that weren't following the advice. And who knows what they may be bringing to the community because they wanted to really do whatever they wanted to do without a thought towards other people. So it was. I mean, for all the joy, I guess that you felt.
What to say?
For all the joy she felt, I'm still cautious. I'm like,
just took you a little time.
yeah, like I'm still like, listen, like there's a lot of people in here. Like I don't know if other people felt like that, but when you got back to say after a year or two of not being around large groups, I had an anxiety or a fear about being around a large group of people and. Just sitting there, just looking around the room and counting how many heads are in there and how much space we have between each other. Just anything. Like, I remember going to the grocery store and, you're going through the shelves and you're looking and you're stooping down and there's people that are walking by, some standing over you, like in the line at the CVS. They have the little markers of the, 6 feet that you're supposed to stand on, and people are not using those markers, and they're just like on your back, and you're just like, oh my God, like why are you so close to me? Like I need 6 feet, like I need arm's length. It's I don't know what's the word that you would call, like what's the phrase?
Paranoid.
Like, okay, paranoid, COVID paranoid, maybe. But I mean, it's with
You don't have to justify it. You're just
I'm
paranoid.
just saying, I don't think it's paranoia.
It sounds like it's giving paranoia.
It has some, validity to it.
No one ever says the paranoia doesn't have validity.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like an irrational fear. Like, it's a real fear that is backed by science. And, I mean, it changed the way that we move in terms of the way that, or at least for me, I would say it changes the way that I move around, where I don't like to be too close to people, especially strangers in public areas.
Yeah.
Like, I choose to not sit so close to folks.
It shifted your perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Whereas I wouldn't have thought about it before. Like, if you go someplace, like, say to like a graduation, and you go in, you sit down, you're sitting by, you're close, you're rubbing elbows with people, and you're like, okay, like, there's like 15,000 people here. And you wouldn't have given it a second thought. Now, it's like, man, there's 15,000 people here. Like, I don't like being so close. I don't like the feeling of someone, like, standing behind me or sitting behind me. Like, I like to keep maybe a seat between me and the next person.
Yeah.
You don't do like that?
I've never liked being close to people.
Oh.
It didn't start with COVID.
Thought it was just my
I don't
paranoia.
I don't like people touching me, so it's never been my thing.
You don't feel that way? Like, when you're in, like, the grocery store?
I don't
And
be
you're
going
just
to the
like-
grocery store. COVID changed our entire lives.
Oh.
Like, most of my groceries now come from Instacart. Like, think about
That
it.
is
Like,
true.
I mean,
That's
sometimes
an
I go with
impact.
Trader Joe's, but
We order way more food, like, through, like, DoorDash and stuff.
Okay.
don't be telling all our business.
Well, I'm just saying.
But that's
For-
one way that you guys.
That's an impact.
affected.
Yeah.
So you guys do more like.
We
online
do
ordering?
more online ordering.
Amazon.
Like, they're making billions.
Not from us
Because-
solely. Like,
We've contributed. We've contributed.
what's the next question?
We've contributed.
Hannah, you mentioned how at the beginning, especially when your business kind of ramped up and you
Yeah.
were having all of these incredible social engagements and performances,
Mhm.
and then it just like disappeared.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Mhm.
One, what was that like? And then what was the process transitioning to having more events again?
Yeah, it was scary. I am, for all intents and purposes, a person with a creative career, right? That is scary. Period. Like, that's scary if you're doing well, right?
Yeah.
But when you add on the element of all of sort of the world shutting down and that kind of thing, I did not know like what I should do, how I should move, if this is the time to quit, try to find one of these online jobs, like did not know what to do. I'm not sure when the shift happened, but so I do a lot of work just as me, Hannah Hassan. So I do performance poetry and consulting and engagements and that kind of thing and speaking. And then I own with my sister-in-law our own company, and we do a lot of also consulting and storytelling workshops and classes, and we produce storytelling shows. And we decided together that like we would need to take everything online. So we just started doing that, started offering like workshops and classes for different organizations virtually. Did virtual productions, storytelling productions, all the things that we could do with people in community. We were very blessed to be able to do it online. And the same thing happened for me individually. Lots of organizations that were still made the decision like, okay, we're going to still have that conference or that convening, but we're going to do it virtually. We need a poet. We need someone to ground us. And, before we begin, we need a speaker. We need, whatever. Like, I really began to meet people from different parts of the country. Got to perform in New York and in California and places like that, but from my home. And that opened me up to a lot. First of all, it was financially lucrative because these organizations that we usually have to pay for to fly a speaker in and all that other stuff, they were able to,
readjust.
Yes. And so that was great. I feel like as a community, we all learned these different ways to do things, like these different ways to have conferences and to still talk about, because my work is also rooted in community, in home, in themes of social justice. And also, the summer of 2020 was, one heck of a summer for conversations around racial justice and equity and that kind of thing. And also during the COVID stay home time, I think there was an election. I did a lot of political like performances. There was just so much going on. that it was really one of the busiest and probably the best times that I have had for my career once I was able to make an internal shift. Yeah. Mind heart shift. Yeah. So I mean, I was very scared. And I mean, I don't know, maybe there's a part of me that always sort of works and runs a bit scared. It's just my general temperament. But it also, once I was willing to see things from a different vantage point, it really did open me up to meeting so many people from so many different parts of the country, and to like performing and getting what I needed financially, and just I think that was a bridge that took my career to another level. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that
Thank you.
turned out for the better.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah. That's not.
It has some advantages, but it also was probably challenging.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, again, this type of career it comes with its own sort of challenges in many different ways, but like trying to figure out like how to navigate that. It doesn't matter how many performances that I had in different cities and how big the virtual crowd was or whatever. It doesn't take away from the fact that I like human connection. Like, imagine like performing your heart out and then at the end, silence. On the screen, people are like, "Congratulations, that was great. That moved me. I'm in tears. I just have to believe you."
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Clapping emoji.
yes, that's what it became. The part of me that does this not for anything other than this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and the way that it makes me feel connected to my community, and that kind of thing, that's gone, because you have to hope that you're reaching somebody, and that's just what's happening. Yeah. So I mean, that piece of things was something that was quite complicated. And also during that time, I was experiencing like changes in my body, like going through some physical health stuff. And so like there was a lot of just me internally trying to navigate everything. And that when you are dealing with things inside of your head and even in your body, being present in your body for a performance, for an engagement, is complicated. Yeah. So, yeah, I did this one poem, and this was sort of a little further in. So we were able to go in person at this point, but not to perform. So the organization decided to film me. So I went into the studio to film. And I was sick. I had some type of virus, and I think it could have been COVID. We just don't know so much about COVID, but I didn't realize that I wasn't well until I got under the lights. And my goodness, like I felt horrible. I could feel it. And I was praying internally as I was, cause when you film a poem or something, it is not just one and done. It is, all right, now let's get it from this angle and try inflection on your voice here and that kind of thing. And I was just like, God, please just let me get through this. And they filmed me. It's so funny because that poem is one that is still used so much to this day in Charlotte. I look so sick on that video. I can see it. And I went to the hospital that next day. Yeah. That's when I had that first COVID test. But like, just there's things, happening. It was a lot. Yeah.
Well, you were so strong.
Thank you. I guess.
I can imagine. Jamaal, tell me a little bit about your work and how did you transition in the last 3 years?
Well, the good thing, the blessing, alhamdulillah, is that my job, even before, the previous position that I was in, they gave us laptops, so I was able to work from home with that one because some of the work that I needed to do required me to do work after hours. So it was really a seamless transition from the time that we were working in the office, and then they said, okay, like we're going to stop working in the office. And it felt like at that point, just at that location, they had, oh man, I say like for maybe like the span of maybe like 3 or 4 months, they kept having cases of people that were at work that tested positive for COVID. And every time they had a case, they had to send an email out to everybody just to, make sure, like, if you come in contact with this person, just know they tested positive for COVID, so you might want to get tested yourself. And at that point, our department decided we're going to go 100% remote. So it was seamless to really go from being in the office to saying, like, now we can work 100% remote. So that was very good on that end.
And so for you, you enjoyed remote work?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it.
And are you still remote now?
Do a hybrid. Some in the office, some at home. But yeah, I enjoyed it, especially when you're getting emails that are saying like, "Hey, just want to let everybody know that we found someone who was in your office on your floor that tested positive for COVID. They've been at work for the past couple of days, so just letting you know." And it's like, wow, like, it keeps happening over and over and over and over. And they're saying, they're cleaning up the area and sanitizing and stuff. But you're sitting there still, or at least I'm sitting there thinking, like, if we were still in the office, could I have interacted with this person? Could we have had a talk maybe in the break room and, had an exchange where now I'm sick? And with every person that gets it, I felt like it's a roll of the dice, depending on, if you have any pre-existing conditions, what have you, what shape you're in. You could go anywhere from being like, oh, like, I don't have any symptoms, to like, you have to go to the hospital and get on a ventilator.
Yeah.
And we, at that point, we had seen enough from just the people in our family. They've seen everything from, not having any symptoms to being in the hospital for a while to, somebody having to plan a funeral because that person didn't make it.
Yeah.
So it was always in the back of your mind, like, at least for me, like, I was just very thankful to have a job where I don't think we were considered essential workers, but one of those ones where they didn't keep you in the office and that you were able to make that transition. Not something where you had to be, say, furloughed, because I know some people were furloughed and just sitting home, but you were able to work and still able to have money and pay your bills and, not run into any of those financial difficulties.
Well, thank you for sharing. Hannah, you mentioned a few minutes ago about during that season there was a lot of social justice movements and what that looked like. And
Yeah.
tell me, for both of you, how were you impacted during that time and even now?
Yeah. I think that all of us had so much access to these videos and things like that on social media that it was really that it was all that we were talking about, trying to figure out. I think that personally, in my work, it was very difficult to navigate what was the right things to say, especially when I'm saying it virtually. There were some like in-person things that were like outside, but there was just so much going on. I think that 2020 was a wild time because like there's so many organizations and things of that nature that were making like these diversity statements, and I had people reaching out to me all the time because they know me to be a voice that speaks to a lot of these issues, and trying to navigate like what is the best way to navigate this was complicated. My company, we produced a storytelling production that was virtual. It was difficult for a lot of people. but it was stories that were from people from within this community, mostly, who let me interview them about like the impact of like whiteness as an entity on like uh in our communities and what that looks like. I had folks share stories with me that I think they probably had would not have otherwise told about like their childhood and things of that nature. I also interviewed a group of black men to talk about their interactions with law enforcement, and we put a production together that tied all of that. It was one that was, I think, really important. Some really important conversations, and I think other actions came from it. So what I did was I used my art, and that's what I continue to do. I think you said, how are things now? I feel that most of those organizations have taken those diversity statements and set them fire. They don't exist anymore. I think that people feel far removed from those diversity and equity and inclusion moments, and it often feels like that those were not sincere. I think a lot of the work that was done in 2020 to, how people say, like, move the needle forward. And I think I'm mostly an optimist, but like I have to be honest about what I see, and a lot of that work feels like it was not sincere. So I am in a place of still just trying to do the things that I believe that I'm supposed to do in this world, and to speak to and about the things that matter to me and my community and my family, and that's just what it is. But yeah, that was a wild time. Yeah.
Let's see. I think I'd echo some of the same sentiments. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot, especially with the way things were now, with people mainly communicating over social media and showing, video after video. And then not only that, but so many people with their opinions, and everyone has a take on it, whether for or against. There's all this information that's coming out, and it can be very overwhelming. That's one thing I would say was very overwhelming during that time, because we're all sitting at home and all we can do is just, consume all of this information, whether, it's misinformation or right information or someone's opinion as like facts and information. It was just a lot. It's, on there to think about, during, and then also during the pandemic, like on top of the pandemic, then we have like these things to think about. So it was just a lot.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. Yeah.
Well, before we started talking, we did an activity together called a hand map. Is there anything from your hand map that you would like to share? You may have touched on some of it already, but is there anything else? And if not, that's okay as well.
I feel like most of the things on my hand map we touched. Like yes, all of them, I think, in some capacity or another.
Okay.
What about yours?
I don't know. I guess the one thing that that's one thing I want to touch on is just like remembering that people like died during this time.
Yeah.
Like it seems like there hasn't been I don't want to say like a memorial or just a acknowledgement that not just here but all around the world, a number of people passed away due to COVID related illnesses. And there were some people who weren't even able to be with that loved one at their time of death. Like some that were maybe outside the hospital, some of them that might have just been in the lobby and then received a message and just like, hey, this is what happened. I had a cousin that passed away during the pandemic due to COVID. He was an essential worker. He was a truck driver, and he was one of those long haul truck drivers that was trying to bring, supplies and stuff to everyone. So during that time, I mean, he was happy to be working and bringing supplies to people around because. At that time, everybody's starting to shut down, so things are becoming more scarce. And, it's like he went to the hospital and literally, I think he was there maybe a week and passed away. And so I just wonder how many stories do people have about that? Because it seems like nothing was ever like done to acknowledge these people. Because when you think about it, I know some people might say, well, according to, how many people, the population of this city, maybe only 1% of the people might have passed away or died with some complications. But like that 1%, that's thousands of people, or at least hundreds of people. And then the people that are affected by that, the people that are connected to that person some kind of way. They just have to be family. It could be co-workers, people from your church or your temple that, like you never got to say goodbye to this person or they just became a statistic.
I think that piece of it that like it's not just that people have passed, it is the quick nature of it. You like I know that impacted you, like not being able to say goodbye to your cousin. Like that mattered. My uncle passed from COVID. And it was quick. Like, he just ended up going to the hospital, him and his son, my cousin. And it was within like a week, or maybe two. But, even still, like we started out talking about our mother-in-law and saying how quick her death was. That was a year. Yeah. COVID just, and not even, like I didn't go to my uncle's funeral because, to be honest, I was nervous. Like, because at that point, a few people in the family had COVID. It's not just the loss. I think it is all of the things attached to it that I don't know. Like it just feels like still such a fever dream. Like, did this really even happen? And how are we all that piece of like, even as a country, like maybe one time I saw like the president and the vice president or something stand in front of a pool or something, but there is there even like a national day of remembrance? Like,
I'm trying to think, like, did they have a moment of silence or something?
Like, it's wild.
It's like, I don't know. It feels like in some ways they were like, well, this was a plague, an epidemic, and a number of people died, but I mean, it felt like maybe not enough people died.
It's not just that even, it's the physical ramifications that we didn't get COVID until last year. But it is hell. It's quite literally the worst I ever felt in my life. And it is scary. And like, I remember when during the time, because I was going through health stuff myself, I was in the hospital, I didn't stay overnight, but I went to the hospital at least maybe 4 times during that 2020, he had to drop me off, right? And that is very hard. We've lost a lot of people over the past, but that piece of being at the hospital by yourself, not knowing what's wrong with you, thinking that it could be this thing, you could go in here and not come back out, that is so very scary. And also the COVID thing, the doctors, they were doing the best that they could, but they were guessing as well, and I know how it felt for me to sit inside of a hospital by myself, trying to figure out what was going on with me because no one else could be there with me. And that was very difficult. And thinking about my uncle, your cousin, like the people who went inside of those hospitals, and like it's almost inhumane to think that we haven't, as a country, as a nation, locally, whatever, really stopped. to say, look at what we have all lived through, and what do you need? You know, I guess this is part of that.
Yeah, normally, normally you have something like they give like I don't know, like a final tally of like, these are the numbers.
Can there be one since it's still out here?
I mean, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, up until this point,
Yeah.
like they like a number. Sometimes when it's tragedy or something, they read off the names or something like that. I know it's too many people to read off all their names and stuff. Just all the people that passed either to COVID or something related to COVID, like the way that what do they call it? Long COVID. Like the number of people that we've talked to that say like I caught COVID and like now I have asthma. Like I think that I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if it's like medically, but the fact that my allergies, like I have serious allergies now, like due to like possibly COVID, like these things of like having shortness of breath and just people who have been impacted even though they didn't pass away just by having it, and just the the weakness of it.
Yeah.
Like when we got COVID, like we were like your body is just it feels weaker afterwards.
I have never not. I don't know that I've ever 100% recovered from that feeling. You know what I mean? Like that physical feeling. Yeah, it's brutal.
Well, Jamaal, Hannah, thank you so much for sharing. I'm gonna have one final question, just to honor and respect your time. And is there anything else that you would like to share before we finish? Story, an experience, anything on your heart?
I don't think so.
No, I think what I said previously, just making sure that those people who did pass away aren't like shoved into like a history book as just like a statistic, like like oh, in Charlotte during this period 1,000 people died, and people are like, oh, that's not a lot if it's 1 million people in the city, but it's like it's 1,000 people that maybe could have been here that are not here anymore. And all the people that, didn't get to say goodbye, all the people that, like I was talking about with my mother's funeral, all the people that maybe couldn't go to her funeral or were scared to go, or, there's some part of the finality of it that just hasn't happened yet. That, people are like, oh, the pandemic's over. Like, all the restrictions are done. But it's like, it was a moment in time, but the effects are lasting. They carry on past, like, to 2020 to 2023 or whatever. So, I mean, that's the one thing that I just wanted to put in there is that,
Thank you. It really shows your heart, Jamaal, and how important it is to acknowledge what we've experienced. And thank you both for your time,
You're
for your
welcome.
vulnerability, and for sharing a little bit of yourselves with us today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
no problem.
you.
Thank you for coming.